I was out in Grand Island at this golf course. We were doing the training at a golf course at the facility. And I went into the restroom. Hey, we're recording. You don't need to hear about my restroom story, apparently. Good morning, everyone. This is Doug, and you're listening to What's the Hazard? It is Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, and we were just talking about, that's what we got onto the subject of the restroom. I was out training this week, and in the golf course, they had a flyer in the restroom that talked about their Cinco de Mayo celebration. I don't know if there was a reason that it was in the restroom necessarily. But I wasn't even thinking Cinco de Mayo until I saw that sign. So
they have an audience in the restroom.
Apparently, there is a reason for it to be posted there. I don't know, but it's great to have everybody. I appreciate your listening. I've got a really interesting group of guests this morning, and we're going to talk about two things. First of all, we're going to do introductions. So I'm going to introduce you as I know you, and then you can tell them the truth, perhaps. So. John Hauser, you are the EHS manager for UNMC. Safety manager. You don't do environmental? I'm
in that same department, so I work with those.
You work with all the environmental folks?
Yep.
None of us do environmental if we can help it.
Exactly.
I think so. And for those that may not know, UNMC is?
University of Nebraska Medical Center.
Excellent.
And
okay.
Got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that is a big, dynamic campus. Mm-hmm. There's a lot happening there. Kelvin Thurman, you are let me see if I get it right, EHS Senior Safety Coordinator for MMC Contractors.
That's correct.
Which is a mechanical contractor, big outfit.
Yep, we have both plumbing, steam fitters, and...
Don't look at the camera.
HVAC, yes.
I'm just teasing, man.
Yep, and then HVAC.
Yes.
Sheet metal.
But you were a big outfit, right? Relatively speaking, in this area, yeah, that's a pretty big outfit.
We have about 500 total employees. 400 of them are tradesmen.
Okay, that's a pretty big outfit, I think. That's and I see your trucks everywhere, so you are very busy, it appears.
Yes, we have all foremen on the jobs have trucks, and then all our service techs. So we have right around 200 trucks.
Oh, man. So does the fleet stuff fall under you guys, too? Is that under your domain?
We're trying to push it away.
I'll bet you are. Oh, my God. The one thing I would never want is fleet. That seems like that would be. Have you ever had fleet responsibilities?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, let's talk about ASSP. So the American Society of Safety Professionals, formerly engineers.
Correct.
And you are the outgoing president, and you are sitting next to, and relatively peacefully, the incoming administration.
Not a coup.
We don't have that in the ASSP. The Great Plains chapter here, headquartered in Omaha, serving the surrounding community.
Go ahead.
The entire state of Nebraska, and then the west side of Iowa.
Fantastic.
All in our chapter.
And so ASSP is a professional networking, training, informational organization. It's a huge organization. As we spoke last time when you were with us, John, we talked about it's a global organization, not just even limited to the United States. It's a big outfit too.
Correct.
And so you've obviously got some plans to change things, and obviously all incoming administrations have grandiose plans. Tell us a little bit about ASSP and what you guys have going on.
The neat thing about my position is we came out of COVID, and just like any other organizations, just had really trouble with
getting back face to face
and organization. And John really honed it, and we got a really dynamic group.
Awesome.
That I'm not going to change a thing.
That's nice, man. That's great.
And so John's been a good mentor and leader on what needs to happen at the Great Plains chapter level, and how do we interact with our regional. And John gave me a big task last month that we're going to bring the entire region to Omaha in September.
Oh, nice.
So we're going to bring all the presidents of all the chapters, and there are 15 of them here to Omaha to have training and discussion points on how to grow this across the Midwest.
That's fantastic. Wow, I love that idea. And so this is interesting because I was working with our friend Chris Bryant this week. He and I were doing some training together. And as we were driving back from our location last night, he mentioned, I asked him about the ASSP, and I mentioned that we were speaking this morning, and he said, I'm going to the meeting in September because the speaker, I believe, at least for the meeting, is the safety manager of the tower.
Correct.
Downtown, and he's going to be addressing their emergency action plan.
Correct.
Which
yes.
sounds fascinating. Mm-hmm. This is a 45-story building, and how do you handle emergency action activities in a building like that?
Correct.
I think that sounds really interesting. So talk a little bit about what else the ASSP does, what the chapter does, what you've got planned, opportunities, anything like that.
Sure. So first of all, we were developed in 1958, and we were at a meeting
just
together.
Shortly after John was developed, I think.
Yeah,
so
3 years, yeah.
we're doing I'm current treasurer, so we're just doing a mandatory audit to make sure all the books are looking good, and one of the fellow members brought me the box of all documents from 1958.
Oh, no kidding.
And gave me the history of ASSE/ASSP. So I have almost 60 years of information. Wow. So
that's really cool.
Yeah,
that is really cool that it's been maintained all this time.
Yep. And so that's pretty neat. So, so we currently have 188 members.
Wow.
And that's grown at least by 10 to 20% over the last 2 years. So
right.
We're having really good growth. Like to continue that on because we'd like to spread the word. Mm-hmm. Just like the September and coming up in May 19th, we're going to have a virtual, and we're going to be discussing flame-resistant clothing.
Nice.
And so that'll be virtual, so everybody can attend, and it's free. Mm-hmm. And then in June, we're going to have a tour at Kloss Manufacturing.
I love that plant. People will love that. That's a fascinating location.
I just can't wait to.
I can't either.
Yeah, that'll be really cool.
And so we're going to do a tour there and some education, and it always typically involves lunch. So we'll have lunch catered in.
Nice.
And then so that's in June. July, we're going to have probably our friend Andy Wedgett.
Oh yeah.
Come in and talk about the new Class 2 type hard hat and.
Nice.
What's the purpose and why do we need to change? Well, might be time for a change to an upgrade. So he's going to come on in and talk about why this change might make sense for everybody. Here at MMC, a number of our job sites are requiring the Type 2 hard hat, which with a chin strap, side impact.
Does it covers the back of the head as well?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think it's the way the industry is going to go anyway. So
no doubt. And so it's important for contractors like you guys to be leading that, so that the other contractors see that and understand that this is the direction we're going. That's a big deal.
It is. Yeah, and
good.
I can't wait to see the growth in better PPE. Mm-hmm. And so Andy has some good stories on that, and that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
September we talked about.
So you do monthly. There's a monthly meeting or a monthly activity typically?
Yes, we have it monthly on the third Friday of every month.
So that's a consistent?
Consistent.
Oh, that's good.
So 11:30, if you're in person, 11:30, we start eating lunch at noon. Whatever event we have, we'll go on at that. So we'll go virtual at that time. So we'll have hybrid.
So you're doing virtual and face-to-face and tours, which I love. I love tours. I love seeing the plants. And so you've got a nice mix of media. And
yes, I think we...
For the people that want to be face-to-face versus those that might not have time or would prefer to be virtual at this point.
Exactly.
That's excellent.
It's hybrid from now on, I think. It's just our world.
And has that improved growth? Do you think that has had something to do with the growth?
I think it's helped. Plus, it's been very difficult. I mean, we have members out in western Nebraska and Scotts Bluff. I mean, there's just no way that they, I mean, I actually have part of the Med Center campus that I have to go out and visit in Scotts Bluff and Gearing, so that's a long haul.
That is a long drive.
So yeah, to come for an hour meeting is very difficult. So so the hybrid meeting has been very good to help us. One of the things that I thought I still think is a great advantage of membership is the networking, where you can get to know people in other industries, even though for example, healthcare has a lot of stuff going on, and university, there's always construction, there's all kinds of stuff. So you have some people that you can ask and contact and say, hey, what do you know about this? What can I do? And the other thing is, there's like a message board where you can throw questions out. One of the ones we saw this last month was, does anybody know who does drug testing after hours, because they may have had an injury or accident, and they want to make sure they test it. So, and people responded and said, here's who we use or who we suggest. So
I love that.
Otherwise, you have to call around and all that time. So it really is kind of a time saver too.
It's huge. Yeah, and you know how I feel about that. I think networking is ultimately the most critical part of this safety thing that we do, knowing who to call, knowing who to get information from, having access like that. I love the networking aspect of it and just the informational aspect of it, because going to a different facility and seeing how they do something can be so helpful.
Yep.
Because when you're just kind of stuck in your own little world and the blinders on a little bit, I think sometimes you just miss out on opportunities that may not have been developed specifically for your industry, but they have application in our industries.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
like the stuff that you have you have fall protection issues, and you have fall protection issues.
Exactly.
Right.
You know, you have other safety issues, and you have probably similar issues, just in a totally different environment.
Yep. Well,
I think that's great.
One of the things over my years that's been good is, for example, I've been at the Med Center a long time. They had areas that had asbestos, and then before you renovate it, you need to remediate the asbestos. So there's a whole set of criteria you got to do with that. And we've changed over time with that. Well, we had a transplant unit that was set up while I started there, and one of the things the physician said is we need to make sure that we protect these patients because they're immunocompromised. So dust, other things that are stirred up by construction or other things can impact them. So before we had the units that were designed specifically for those patients, we looked and it was kind of like, well, we're doing this, and for asbestos, some of those same techniques can be used to protect the patients in the immunocompromised, the transplant unit. So it's great to learn from that. And I know Kelvin and I have talked before about healthcare construction, because they do a little bit of that, and there's special criteria because you've got patients in adjacent areas that are incomparable, or they're unable to help themselves if there's an emergency. So it's really kind of a matter of life and death. And actually, we produced a VHS tape many years ago to kind of educate some of our own staff and contractors about that same fact, that there's a lot of stuff they do that could impact people. You know, they work on the med gas systems, the HVAC systems, the plumbing things. And so it's really important that they understand that.
That's really interesting that you say that, because my introduction to industrial hygiene was with the Department of Defense. All we did was asbestos. You know, every DOD facility was just full of asbestos. And so we just basically either encapsulated or remediated or removed asbestos constantly. And every time I go into a hospital, there's work being done, and it looks like asbestos containment, air filtration,
right?
And restricted access type things.
More than likely, it's not asbestos now.
No, right. But I mean, the same technology.
Exactly. The same procedures, because dust is a big issue.
Exactly.
And I mean, we have some research labs. It's the same way. So it kind of translates over to the university too. So it's real important. And actually, I do recall receiving some research articles that said, you know, dust from this asbestos project, or from this construction project, impacted the diagnostic tests in another area. So, you know, there are some things that
significant.
It's a big impact on that. So
absolutely, that's really interesting. Well, so one of the things I wanted to discuss, you have really dramatically different customers. You know, you work with laborers, skilled laborers, engineers, project managers, and you're working with, your responsibilities include professors, technicians, laboratories, students, the public. So huge differences. But one thing that I think is important across the board within safety is establishing some level of trust with our customers, so that we can engage with them and, you know, identify opportunities. Talk to me just a little bit, if you would, both of you, about some of the challenges that you have in your work environments specifically, and how you go about establishing that trust, if you would. Would you mind?
Sure.
Because I think that is a universal challenge for all safety and health practitioners.
Well, I think the first thing is kind of understanding the audience, because there's different levels of audience. I'll tell you, I started out at St. Joe's, which was associated with Creighton at the time, and then going to a public institution, the university. There's a whole different world. It was almost like, and somebody will knock me for this, but the physicians and some of the researchers at Creighton were up here. They were kind of next to God, okay? So you had to figure out how to address them that way. And then when I went to university, it was the learning environment, the academic environment there, the whole thing where it was integrated with the hospital. It wasn't across the interstate like Creighton St. Joe's was at the time. So it was a whole different environment, and you found who your allies were and kind of worked with them too. And sometimes you have to kind of, you have to go to upper management and say, okay, we need your assistance here. But I think the important thing is to educate people as to why things are important, because you just can't say, well, you can't do that. OSHA says no, or this is that. I think if you tell them why and help them to understand, it's important. I kind of think one of the things I found really interesting is I would go around to a department and somebody would say, yesterday we found this and we told them we actually fixed it because we knew if you came up here, you'd be mad. It's like, it's not that I'm going to be mad. It's that you corrected it so nobody's going to get hurt.
Right.
And that's the important thing. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, I think, educating people as to why things are important has been very, very important and on their level too.
I think that dictatorial safety, that you got to do this because OSHA said so, or I say so, that ship
Doesn't
sailed
work.
a long time ago.
Right.
And it probably never worked, frankly.
And then the other thing is trying to establish trust. So you need to make sure you're there to answer their questions. You don't just blow them off, and you be responsive too. So if somebody has a concern, try to address it now, because over the years, if you don't address it, it festers, and it's like a disease and can spread like a pandemic if you don't address things quickly. So that's really important too.
That's a great comment, man. Know your audience, listen, and be responsive. It's one thing to listen and hear, but as you mentioned, when employees don't see any action, well, they don't trust that you're worthy of their time, perhaps.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
interesting. What about on the construction side? So I've worked with lots of construction workers over the years. My time with OSHA, nobody ever was meaner to me than the construction guys when I would roll onto a site. And I'm just teasing. I mean, they weren't mean necessarily, but it's a different audience, and they have different expectations. And, so is there a difference in how you approach it, or is it the same formula?
I think it's about the same formula. I came from a oil packaging, distribution, and then came into construction. The difference coming in was this was all unionized.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to be up
Yeah.
to, and they're so professional. I was just shocked. My mom and dad both were union members. I never have been, but so back to the trust, and at one of the big data centers, can't say where, but
they don't even have names as far as I
have exactly. So we were doing some work in an elevator shaft, like 6 stories up, and it was all scaffolding. And as my wife can attest, I don't really care for heights. I'll do heights, but I really don't care for them. And so it's not like your guest last week or last month with Rob Lucky that loves heights.
Oh yeah, no man. Well, he's a freak. So,
so
let's be honest.
So they had a question 6 stories up on this scaffolding. So I'm walking and doing the ladders for 6 stories, and got up there, and they gave me the question, and I was like, okay, here's the answer. And one of the guys, a nice guy, but I mean, just tough looking, tats up and down the arms, just tough as can be. He goes, I can tell you care. I go, yeah, I do care. I don't want to see you get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think it's coming in with that caring attitude. I'm not here to be your boss. I'm here to Make sure you go home.
Right.
That's it.
Just help you work more safely.
Yeah,
Correct.
You climbed up to the top of the area where they were working. You didn't do it from afar. Just say, well, here's what I think. You went up to where they were working to see it for yourself. Yep. That's
And I was
great.
scared.
And they could probably see you shaking. Yeah, they probably knew that you were uncomfortable, but that even buys you more good faith because if you're putting yourself in that uncomfortable situation in order to help them, they see that. These folks see that stuff.
Yeah.
That's a great story, man. That's a great story. I was talking to a group of people this week, and they were, I was talking about safety, and I said the only thing that is required to be a good safety person is just to care. The other stuff you can learn if you're not an expert technically, okay. But if you care, then at least we're going to be making the effort. There'll be trust established. They know you're trying. I think that's one of the most important, most critical things, and I think it gets overlooked sometimes. They're looking for credentials and all the other stuff, and those are nice. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not what makes you a good safety person, in my experience.
And I would 100% agree. I got the degrees, got the CSP, but my mentor in safety is Dave.
You can say his name, Stolpe.
Stolpe. Yeah,
it's okay.
Yeah. So
unless he's wanted, I don't know.
He doesn't have a degree. He doesn't have a CSP, ASP, but that man knows more about safety than me. And
he's lived it for 50 years, and he's given his life to it. So.
He has, and so I've learned a lot from him, and that's kind of neat that I can give back to.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because some of the best safety people I know have no degrees, have no certifications.
Yep.
They just have devoted their lives to it. It's not something that you do 8 hours a day, frankly. It doesn't turn off, people.
Exactly.
You just, you're always available. As John said, you have to be available. It's not like it's an 8 to 5 job,
Exactly.
Because that's rarely when the issues occur. Yeah. So that's interesting.
One of the things, we had a contractor on site one time that was digging a trench, putting a new steam lines in, and this trench was at least 50 feet deep, and they had a little bobcat down there digging around, and they had dirt piled up next to the trench, and I'm sitting there going, if I'm a kid, I like to play on dirt piles.
Absolutely.
I can see a kid doing that, sliding down in the hole. And the other thing is no shoring. And I went over there and talked to the foreman, and I said, you don't have any shoring in here. And I said, plus that dirt pile's there. There's no fence around there. I said, you're not supposed to have the dirt next to the hole. And he says, this is the best damn hole I've been in. He said, I went down there and I put rebar in there and it was solid. And he says, I wouldn't put my guys in a hole that I wouldn't go in myself. And he says, so I went down there, it's safe. I said, I don't see any OSHA standards on shoring where it says rebar sticking in the hole is fine, and it says the best damn hole is okay. I said, plus I said, look, there's a bus coming by. I said, the vibration on the road. I said, could cause that to go in. So they ended up reluctantly putting shoring in there.
Good for you.
But it's just like, it wasn't, I'm not responsible for the contractors, but I'm concerned about, I am responsible for people playing on the dirt pile and sliding in because it wasn't.
It's your campus. It was on your campus, right?
Exactly. So yeah, we've had some things like that where you got to kind of say this isn't right. But we've had some real good contractors too, and they're getting much better because they have people like Kelvin who kind of helps get them in the right frame of mind. So
I totally agree. There's some really impressive contractors in the Omaha area that really take this seriously, and we've all watched it evolve because we were all around when it wasn't quite taken as seriously, and it was really a fight to get them to do some of these things. And now they, you guys and others that I have the pleasure of working with are kind of leading, and they're certainly leading by example. I think the data centers had a lot to do with this too, because the work has been very lucrative to a lot of contractors, but the expectations have been very high. They run tight ships, and so a lot of our local contractors have certainly profited from that work, but they've learned a lot from that work too. And they carry that to other jobs, and the subs that work there, they carry that to other jobs, and so it's really been gratifying to see. I'm really happy about it. Now you get out to Benkelman in western Nebraska, they may not have the same approach, but it's a process, right? We're making progress, so I do love that. Talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges that you have in your respective work environments. I mean, that unique challenges that are unique to an academia or laboratory work, and even the variety of work that you guys do. So what kind of challenges are you faced with?
I had a surprising one about 3 or 4 months ago. My salesperson and project manager called and said, hey, we're going to be working on this building, and it has multiple cell towers. And like radio frequency hazard.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so I straight up, I've not been with that. So I'm going out on the Mechanical Contractors Association's website.
Oh, nice.
And they had videos and information on this. And so I pulled all our guys in, and here's what we're dealing with. So at that point, I needed to contact Verizon to shut it down while we're working, call them back when we're done, and then did that 2 days in a row and learned that their 7 o'clock is really 8 o'clock because they're in Denver. So I'm trying to hold my guys back. You can go to work at 7. So as soon as you hear from me after I get it shut down.
After somebody shows up at the Verizon.
And I've been calling for an hour. Why aren't they answering? They're
Mountain time.
Mountain time.
Dude, I have that problem with Verizon all the time. I don't think anybody ever answers the phone, but for different reasons.
So radio
really
frequency hazard. And
Interesting.
so I rolled that out to all our service guys because our guys are out on roofs all the time. So project managers, service techs saying, hey, here's this hazard. If you see, just take a glance, take a 10-second glance to see, and call me if you have any questions or concerns. I did that training here in Omaha, and then I went to Des Moines for our service team there to, hey, this is a new hazard that I never would have thought to come across.
Yeah, that's great because
good for you.
And who would think? Look around for towers, So.
Well, and this is something that Chris Bryant preached all week long in this 30-hour class that we do. Look up. We all look down pretty well, but look up. And that could apply to overhead power lines. That could apply to towers. That could apply to a lot of things. That could apply to the infrastructure of a building when you're moving materials around, whatever. But don't forget to look up. We're all pretty good at looking down, ground level.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. You have to have come across some crazy stuff.
Well, we actually had a building several years ago where we were adding 4 stories to an existing building. The building was a research building and had fume hood exhausts. So the contractor came and said, okay, what are we being exposed to if we're up here on the roof? So we had to do a whole survey of what all the items that they would ever use in those laboratory fume hoods, and then captured or at least collected all the SDSs from them.
That's
and then kind of did a little education series for them too, because it was until they could raise the roof exhaust. The steel guys put the steel up and they're kind of out in the open a little bit, but then those are designed to throw air way up high in the sky. So, they say dilution is a solution to pollution, but it's not always, because some things are heavier than not. So,
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was one of the ones. And the other thing is, we have a lot of areas where they may be working with hazardous chemicals, or they may be working with biological agents. So our biosafety folks are right on the ball with that too. So
phenomenal. You guys are like one of the top in the country.
Yeah. And of course, then we have the biocontainment area 2 facility, and that's grown over time too. So just working. When we started that, I think there was one other one in the country, and so we had to kind of design stuff from scratch, because it was actually, I think, at the CDC in Atlanta, or it may have been out on the Air Force Base back east. So they got a team together: architects, engineers, infection control folks, epidemiologists, nurses, and kind of work through the whole design thing of that thing. So
I love that. You guys have some issues that most of us don't encounter very often. That's really remarkable. But you just commented on something that I really have become fond of, that concept of learning teams, where you bring different players together to explore some of these challenges and how we're going to address it, rather than just dictating, this is what it says, this is what we're going to do. So talk about that a little bit.
So one of the things, another good experience was, before 9/11, were concerned about what the facility would do if they had somebody that was contaminated with chemical or biological stuff. And we actually there were a couple people that went down in a tank. They were cleaning the tank. They went down in the tank. They brought them to our facility, and they were off-gassing things. So it's kind of like, well, okay, well, what do we do? They're off-gassing stuff from their lungs, and they're breathing it out in the room. So how do you adapt to that? So we actually worked with respiratory care to develop a deal where they could put kind of a filter on the respirator so that they could filter the air coming out. But the other is, how do you decontaminate them? And so we worked with hospitals. We worked with first responders. We worked with the community to develop plans, and that was the Omaha Metropolitan Medical Response System, to develop plans on how to do that. So it's making sure you have the right people on the team and getting all the information you can. And so now, pretty much, I still remember the first time I went to a meeting. Before that, the question was, what would you do if somebody was contaminated with radiation? Because you could have a dirty bomb or something like that. Of course. And all the hospitals said we'd send them to university. And I was like, I stood up and said, hold on. I said, you guys, we'll probably be overwhelmed shortly. One, because everybody's sending everybody here. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to develop a plan to take care of those people in-house, so you're not contaminating your own folks too. Right. So yeah, there's all kinds of interesting
Everybody said you're going to send them to university.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. So, and
interesting.
We would be overwhelmed very quickly.
And so how does that work in your world? How do you solve problems? I mean, are you guys using those same types of teams? I mean, engaging different players? I mean, do you guys do that as well?
We have something exciting coming up. One of my coworkers is developing a team to address suicide in construction. Yeah. So she is getting with HR, the labor coordinators. Labor coordinators in our organization are the ones that go hire the union guys to come in. Mm-hmm. So plumbers, fitters, and sheet metal.
They work directly with the halls then.
Exactly. So them and the shop. So she's going to get a collaboration, some project managers, some mid-level managers together to, let's talk about this. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's a real thing in construction that we need to,
unfortunately,
begin to break the eggshells of, hey, let's talk to these guys in a constructive way. And so she's developing the same team.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I'll be interested in seeing what she can come up with. She's a credible person, and she'll be able to.
Oh, I'm sorry that you have to do that, but I've read the statistics, or I hear the statistics, and these are big, strong men that probably typically don't seek out emotional help or support. Oftentimes, that's a real challenge. I hope that works well. But I love that idea of that collaboration with all of the players, and even the unions. They know this. They know that their people need this kind of support. Yeah. So.
Mental health is a big topic.
Well, in your industry as well, just because of the stress and the strain and the burnout.
The COVID hasn't helped. It didn't help anything.
No, it did not help.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, so let's talk a little bit about training. You both have unique training situations as well. And so what I would love the audience to hear from you is a couple of things. Who drives your safety programs? I mean, obviously, we realize that we don't drive safety programs. We're just facilitators or whatever, resources more than anything else. So where is the program driven? And then we'll talk a little bit about training as well, because I think training is always a challenge for everyone, and particularly when you have large, diverse organizations. So talk a little bit about where do you expect the program to be driven from?
So it really needs to be in the departments, and the department managers need to take a role in that too. And because if it's not on that level, then it's like somebody from down on high is saying we must do this, and that's a real challenge. So that's important. And we actually, our safety guide and emergency preparedness manual, they review that the first year when they first come on campus, and then we also provide hands-on fire extinguisher training, we use a trainer, not so we used to do in the good old days. We'd go out and
Set something on fire.
it set some on fire. Actually, we'd have the pan with gasoline. And
Oh yeah, I
put
love that.
Yeah.
I miss that.
Well, the problem is air intakes, and you don't have space on campus anymore, and then it's not good for the environment too. So,
Right.
So yeah, we do that, and then we use the electronic trainer, so it gives people the hands-on experience to do that kind of thing, and it's been very beneficial. I had somebody come to me once and said, I was so and so, and there was a fire, and I grabbed the fire extinguisher, put it out, and I probably would not have known how to do that because
that's terrific.
remember in grade school they used to beat it into us. Don't touch that fire extinguisher because people would do that.
They were fun.
And so they don't touch it. You get in trouble. You get expelled. So that's a big fear you have to overcome with people is, you can actually do it. Pull the trigger and that. So, of course, with the trainer, it's a laser beam that comes out. It's not powder or liquid or anything. So you just kind of have to educate them into how to use that. So we do that. And then at our facility every year, they have to review that material and attest that they've reviewed and understand it too. So, and depending on what you're doing, there's also the biohazard training for those folks that work in laboratories in those areas too. So, but I think it's important that that's on the department level. It's tracked on the campus level and then reported back to the department managers. And then if people have questions and don't understand stuff, then we're always there to help. And I've gotten a few questions with, you said this, why does it do that? So, yeah.
So would it be a fair comparison to equate a department manager to like a superintendent in the construction world?
Exactly. They're responsible for their folks.
Okay.
Not just for safety, but for a lot of getting the job done and all the other stuff.
Right.
So they're kind of like the site manager or foreman. Yes.
That makes sense. And so are you then, you are equipping them with training and information and education to then be able to disperse that out throughout their department. So that's kind of where you're obviously on the ground, boots on the ground. The employees know you.
Right.
They probably, everybody knows you when you're coming through.
So
don't get mad at me, John.
Yeah, and the other thing is we have over 400 research laboratories on campus.
Oh my gosh!
And so we have folks in our department that at least once a year go in and review that the lab, inspect the lab to make sure things are the way they are, and if they find something that's not, they educate them as to why it needs to be, and then we've developed kind of a nice laboratory safety poster that covers all kinds of things, fire safety. It cites where the muster point if they have to evacuate is from the building. It talks about chemical safety, biohazard, all the other stuff. So it's kind of a real quick reference that the employee can use.
This is interesting because the audience is different. Your group probably enjoys reading. They have spent their whole life reading. They are academics and readers.
Yep.
Your group, I don't want to, maybe not. Maybe they don't learn by reading necessarily. So putting that poster up that John just referenced, and I don't mean, that's not intended to be disparaging at all, but that's just, these are guys that work. And they're probably all well-read, but they learn by doing. Totally different approach. So how do you guys, who drives safety in your organization?
Well,
if that's the appropriate term.
We kind of have an outside resource also with the data centers. They're saying, hey, this group, the workers are going to have an OSHA 10 hour, and all the foremen and project managers are going to have a minimum OSHA 30 before you even come on the job site. So that's helped drive a lot of training.
Okay.
Then we're always being challenged or find new opportunities of hazards with the NFPA 70E arc flash and electrocution for service techs. And so we are partnering with Todd, I can't think of, with Commonwealth to come in and teach NFPA 70E to our service tech. So I brought him into Des Moines. And
what's Todd's last name? Longnecker or something?
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
And so he's going to come in and teach our guys on that and get them all the PPE that they need, which is around $600 per person.
Right. It's not cheap.
It's not. It's a good investment.
It is a good investment.
I thought I was going to have difficulty with management. I have not, and so I was really encouraged by that. Sent them the cost of PPE per person, cost of the training, cost of time for their service techs to be out. But so here in June we'll do all our service techs in Lincoln
Fantastic.
and then come back here in Omaha and get the remaining
You have
service techs.
People working alone? Your service techs are out by themselves?
Both, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge issue.
Yeah.
Have you come up with anything interesting or innovative that you think is useful with managing that lone worker? I mean, do you have check-in times? Do you have specific communication? Everybody's got a cell phone, obviously, at this point.
They all do have cell phones, but no.
That is such a challenging issue.
Yeah, I'm in charge of the service and special projects, and for me to just find them, I mean, they go to a job for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours.
Right.
By the time I get there, they're gone. And they're on to the next thing. So,
Really challenging.
it is really challenging. And I know one of the other mechanical contractors has some sort of app on their phones. If the phone doesn't move within 20 minutes,
Heard of those?
Sends an alert.
it sends an alert saying, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" We have not explored that yet.
It's interesting. But yeah, there are a lot of concerns about lone workers. And I know there are technologies. Again, some of them are, they have some usefulness, but they're not perfect. And others are really expensive but have limited range.
Right.
I mean, you've got, how are you going to connect to all of these devices and things? It's really an interesting challenge. But I appreciate the fact that people are working on it because it's always been kind of an interesting challenge, so.
It is, yep.
That's-
And when you have 100 service techs here in Omaha and another
Wow.
20 in Lincoln, another 30 in Des Moines, and for our safety.
Put a lot of miles on the car?
Yes, put a lot of miles on the car.
I bet you do, man.
Yeah.
But you don't have to drive quite so much other than that occasional trip out west.
Well, we have campuses. We have the College of Dentistry in Lincoln.
Oh, that's true.
And we have also there's a college of nursing there. There's the Health Professions Education Center on the Kearney campus. That's ours too. And then I have a teaching dental clinic in Gering, and then Norfolk is the College of Nursing, and then I also have a College of Nursing in Scottsbluff. So,
I retract my
yeah.
statement. You drive a lot too.
yeah, so try to hit those areas because it's a different world, and want to make sure that everything's safe for both our staff and students.
What do you find most rewarding about the work? You've been doing this a long time, man, longer than me.
I just think it's nice to be able to help people and make sure that people can go home at the end of the day, and also help teach them that there's a right way to do things and a safe way to do things, and why it's important to do that. So
Yeah, the why is really critical.
And there's times where I go, well, I'm just going to do this. I may not need to grab this protective equipment, or as we talked with Rob, I may not be able to. I may not have to because it's just quick to latch up to my safety harness and fall protection. So, but one of those little things can end up bad. So you just kind of work with them on that.
That's a tough sell.
Yeah.
Those I'm just going to be in there for a minute, or I'm just going to be up there for a minute. Those are usually the.
Or I've done it 100 times before.
Yes.
And it's like, well, it's that one time that could kill you.
I love your focus on why. I think that's really critical. Simon Sinek, good friend of mine. You might have heard of him. He's on YouTube. Actually, we've never actually interacted, but I listen to his videos, and he has that video that focus on the why in anything you do, not just working safely, but just about in anything. Not how and not necessarily what, but why. And I appreciate that comment because that's important.
Helps you to understand, and understand is important.
What about you, man? What do you love about this? You've been doing this a long time too. When did you start in this world?
I started in this world at the National Safety Council.
That's where you got your start in safety?
Yep. And so
Well, that was a while ago.
it was 20 years ago, 18 years ago. And so I was in sales at National Safety Council for quite a number of years, and I began. Dave Stolp kind of mentored me, and then I took all the classes. And,
Nice.
And then after about 8 years, I said, well, let me see if there's a difference between telling people what to do and then doing it. So I went to the oil packaging and distribution, and there's a difference.
No doubt. There is a difference.
There is a difference of telling you what to do and needing to do it, and it's been just gratifying.
I'll bet.
And so,
And particularly when the employees show that appreciation, even a thank you, or I can tell you care. Any of those comments.
Right.
That makes all the difference.
Or like the comment, well, I knew you'd be upset if you saw this, so that's why I took care of it. It's like,
Right.
And
you don't seem like a guy that gets terribly upset necessarily.
Well,
You've seen it all.
Not usually. I still remember when I worked for the hospital, during Christmas for volunteer services, I would dress up as Santa and we'd go in Christmas Eve and give a gift to each of the patients. And one day, one of the times I walked into a room and here's a live Christmas tree in a hospital, which we're not supposed to have those. So it was kind of like undercover. I was undercover, to check things out. So,
in the Santa suit.
So yeah, I had to educate the staff. The staff said, well, they wanted to bring it in for their mother. I said, yes. But I said, if it caught fire, they wouldn't say, well, the staff let me do it. That's exactly what they'd say. And I said, well, not only do you affect that patient, but you affect everybody on this floor and maybe in the entire building. So, because you've seen those videos with how quick a tree goes. It's like they wouldn't have time to get anybody out of the room.
No, I know, man.
So yeah.
And it seemed like a very compassionate gesture.
Exactly.
They're trying to do a nice thing.
Exactly. And I understand.
Yeah. But so why?
I've had to play Scrooge a lot of times.
But the why, again, why, even why not is an explanation that they can get their head around probably.
Exactly.
It's interesting.
So.
Yeah, man.
And it's fun when the guys bring challenges to us. They're proactive. It's like, ooh, what about this?
Like the problem-solving aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's like, we're kind of concerned about this. And a lot of my foremen are that way, that I trust them, but they trust me to, if they need me, I'll be there.
Right.
And but
it's gratifying when they start calling. Actually,
exactly,
they start asking.
Yep.
And so
when you don't hear from anybody, maybe it's time to worry a little bit. Things aren't really going that smoothly. They're just hiding everything from you, perhaps. Right.
And I think in the past that was the way, but it's always
good,
one person at a time, I guess.
Absolutely.
And
yeah. Well, one thing I do want to talk about is the LEPC. You've had an opportunity to serve on the Local Emergency Planning Committee, LEPC. I'm not sure many people have perhaps heard of the LEPC, but not many.
Right.
And people that have not. Can you talk a little bit about the LEPC and what that experience was like? Or
sure.
Are you still on the LEPC?
I'm not a member anymore. About a year and a half ago, I stepped down.
Okay, talk a little bit about that.
I had been on it since its inception in the late 90s. After Bhopal, India, the EPA came out and said, we need to make sure that the communities have information on the hazardous materials that are in the community and that they can plan and prepare for response to those emergencies. So the LEPC consisted of the local, the fire department, the hazmat folks, community representatives from either neighborhood associations. It also consisted of business and industry, because you have some businesses here that use may use hazardous materials, and they want to be a good corporate citizen, and so we all kind of work to make sure that our folks are trained and equipped on what to do, and in emergencies. And we've had some incidents. I think that Knox fire was a real interesting one. There was I still remember. We had a board member, or at least a LEPC member, that was one of the community folks, and there was an incident at the Woodman of the World, their mail room. They had some chemical, that bottle broke open, and it was kind of unknown, and so they evacuated the building. She called me during the event, and she said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Regarding what?" She said, the spill at the Woodman of the World. I said, "I'm letting the first responders and the hazmat folks handle the situation." I said, "We are a planning committee, not a response committee."
Response.
Yeah. So that's important for people to understand. But anybody can join.
Nice.
And it's kind of under the Douglas County Emergency Management Agency. They don't run it. It's run by folks in the community. I think John Packett is the current chair of the, and he used to be, the chief of security and emergency for Henry Dorley Zoo.
Oh,
he was also retired Omaha Police.
Okay.
And I think he also was in the mayor's office too. So,
and wasn't Paul Johnson
the
Douglas County Emergency Management guy?
Yes, and
I don't know if he still is or not. But.
I think he is, and right now the representative on the committee is Aaron Allward.
Okay.
And he's Paul's assistant. So,
Okay.
So yeah, they play an important part. Now, not every county has an LEPC. In the state of Nebraska, there's some counties that don't, but they have what they call a regional or wide area LEPC. And then the LEPCs also report to the State Emergency Response Committee, so the CERC.
The CERC. Yep.
And so that they kind of review who the membership and those folks, and then approve of that too. And then they have some guidelines where you need to kind of make sure that you make sure you have the plans in place for the community response. So it's been very beneficial, and I think there's been a lot of folks that have learned with that. So one of the groups that's also involved in that is the hospitals. So
definitely, yeah, because they're going to be receiving these patients perhaps or exposed individuals, and so I guess for people that don't realize this, there are EPA submissions that we make that are actually going to be utilized by the LEPC.
Right.
Are those the tier 2s or Form Rs and stuff? Or
right. It's the tier 2s, and they're supposed to send them to the state. The original requirement for LEPCs is that folks in the community would send their SDSs for their hazardous materials to the fire department.
Yes.
The fire department does not have the resources to handle that. Right. So really, the tier 2s are important because it kind of tells about what hazardous materials are on site, the quantities, and if you're above a certain quantities, you have to fill out the tier 2s, and it will tell the location in the plant so that it can be used for emergency planning, that kind of stuff. So it's real important. And then we would look at the tier 2s to kind of say, okay, where are these things in the community? You can plot them on a map to determine, okay, what healthcare facilities or what schools, what nursing homes are nearby, and that kind of helps in the planning
really
too,
helpful.
because you want to make sure that if there's an event, you get the word out either to shelter in place, shut your air handling systems down, and those kind of things. So
that's really interesting, man. I bet that was kind of a fun gig. I think that's cool.
It was fun. It was challenging at times, but really rewarding too.
Good for you. Well, we appreciate you having done that because you're not getting paid a lot for that, I don't suppose.
They're all volunteers. Well,
thank you for doing that.
I had a chance to go attend the committee last month because I had to bring we had gotten a plaque from the regional EPA because we planned a conference before the pandemic, and I had not seen that to turn it over when I turned over my box of history. So I got, and it's thriving. There's
good. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, but there's always room if somebody wants to volunteer.
Yeah, that would be a great. That would be a great committee to participate on. I'll bet.
Yep.
Be kind of cool.
You know, some of the other committees that have been interesting over the years is I was on the first committee for Douglas County to develop medical waste standards and regulations for the county. And that was really interesting too, because back in the good old days, we used to reuse everything. Not everything. They reuse needles.
But you'd autoclave it and reuse it?
Exactly. The bedpans, the urinals, and
I think I got a reused bedpan once.
Yeah, well, people plant flowers in them nowadays.
Yeah, they do.
So, but there was a lot of stuff going in the waste, and there were incinerators. Incineration was the way to do it.
Right.
And the county was concerned about every hospital having an incinerator. And at the time, I think there were 4 or 5 of them did, because those emit stuff.
Absolutely.
And so we helped develop the regulations for that on packaging, permitting incinerators, and those types of things. So that was kind of interesting too, because there was some of the environmentalist volunteers on the committee. They wanted us to go back to all glass, and I said, no, you don't want to do that. And reuse needles. I said, think about that. I said, how can I make sure the inside of the needle is clean?
Right.
And then sometimes the point on the needle dulls after a certain point at time.
Absolutely.
And you don't want a non-sharp needle going into your skin because it'll rip into the skin. Yeah. So, I mean, in healthcare, disposables are good.
Yeah.
Because you can do your best to clean them and that kind of stuff, and they do a great job with the stuff we still reuse. But some of the stuff we used back in the day was not good. And then the other one was the Omaha Metropolitan Medical Response System. I now think it's called the Omaha Healthcare Coalition. That was the group that actually worked with the community on emergency response for mass casualties, having information and equipment to do decon of patients. And I served on the equipment and training committee so that we could get all the hospitals equipped and trained to do that. The sad thing is, I've noticed since 9/11, we started before 9/11, after 9/11, there was a big push: is we got to do this, we got to do this. Now, as time goes on, it's like, we forget things and we don't need to do it because we haven't had that. So it's the new generation. You got to say, no, this is still important, because if it happens, you need to make sure you have folk trained and equipped to do that.
Right. Absolutely. Well, let's wrap up with a little bit of ASSP. I have loved the conversation. I think it's so interesting, how diverse your workforces are, but how similar the approach to safety is. I think that's almost a universal approach in most cases. So regardless of your industry, we can learn from these guys about how to best serve our customers, our employees, or whomever that might be. But we're here to talk a little bit about the ASSP as well. So let's talk about membership. If someone was interested in a membership, the website is fantastic, I might add.
And that is?
Yeah, give me the website, and where can people go if they want to get involved?
greatplains.ASSP.org is our website.
Easy.
And so right on there will be our upcoming events. Go ahead and click on that and sign up, either virtual or in person if there's in-person.
You do need to RSVP.
We do.
If you want to play, right? I mean, you need to be accounted for.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then
membership information's there as well.
Membership information is there as well. And then here in the next 30 to 60 days, we're going to request some additional volunteer opportunities. We're going to looking at and working with John to co-partner a couple of the chairman positions, communications, what else? The internet
membership.
Membership. So just not just have one person, maybe perhaps have two, so they can co-partner together. We're all busy and
volunteers.
Yeah,
and we're all
voluntary. Absolutely,
we're all
man.
volunteers.
You realize this is voluntary too. You're not getting paid for this. You know that, right?
What, John?
I'm sorry to break that to you at the end. Maybe that wasn't appropriate.
It's the fame, the fortune comes later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, delayed gratification.
Yes. So
that's great. And the website is fantastic. And everybody that calls me looking for employment in some fashion, I direct to the website, because you guys do a great job with that. Keeping that information current and available to people that are seeking employment or people looking for good qualified employees, safety people. That is really useful. But I mean, the true benefit is just the network. Just the opportunity to get to know and meet and interact with other safety professionals, invaluable.
Yep. And I mean, the learning opportunities like the fall protection and the hard hat thing too. I still remember when, of course, healthcare didn't have a lot of hard hats. We had stuff with some of the facilities guys, but I never knew until about 15, 20 years ago that hard hats have a life. Mm-hmm. There's an expiration date on them, and you need to read the secret code to find the expiration date. So
that little secret code stamped
exactly.
Well, let me tell you how I learned how my hard hat expired. Do you remember David Sowell? He used to be with Kiewit Construction. Mm-hmm. David was a safety guy with Kiewit, and we worked on a few projects together. And David was a big man. He was the big meaty hands guy that would crush your hands like a vice when you shook hands and then just grin. When I rolled up onto one of their sites one time when I was with OSHA, and David grabbed my hard hat off my head and squeezed it like, you can kind of flex them a little bit to see if they have any life left in them, and he just shattered my hard hat. And I think it was still within its lifespan, but David just thought that was funny that he just blasted my OSHA hard hat in two pieces. So, that's how I learned that. I had to replace my hard hat periodically. But I love the training opportunities. It's really a unique and valuable group. Everybody is pressed for time. We're all too busy, but you can't put a value on how important these opportunities are. So
and having consistent to be able to put your in your calendar for September. It's going to be the third Friday. It gives our members the opportunity to book it into their busy schedules.
Right. You can schedule all of those things right now and then join ASSP.
Exactly.
And you'll already have them in your calendar.
Yep.
Fellas, this has been really enjoyable for me. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Thanks for all the volunteer work that you guys do. I mean, I know that stuff goes on behind the scenes and people don't realize it, but man, those are really important committees and projects. So thank you for doing that. And go check out the ASSP website. And there's going to be something on there that appeals to you, I'm sure. Doris just cut me off because I haven't put my membership back in yet. And she is a taskmaster, man.
Doris
she sent me a note saying, you're supposed to sign up, and I'm not sending you any more emails until you sign up. So I have to sign up this weekend. And I used to be a member, and then I got really busy with OSHA, and I'm just making excuses, of course. But
sure.
It's a group that we all need to be a part of. So get to the website, check it out. Third Friday of every month. Just put that on your calendar now. And we'll go from there.
I don't know that we have anything planned for August, though. That's the one thing.
We don't. Yeah. So I'll challenge the people that are listening to, hey, you have some information and knowledge to come and share. We need something for August.
I've got
October.
A guy.
So
I've got a guy. I'll give you some contact information. He would be great. Be a great speaker. So
perfect.
We'll hook him up. He would be terrific.
Doug is his first name, or
it is not.
Oh, okay.
In fact,
Good.
no,
Okay.
It is not Doug. Yeah. My good friend Pete. If you listen to the podcast, I've talked about Pete Suska. Mm-hmm. He's a consultant out in Connecticut, and he talks about operational excellence and improvements, and safety is just a manifestation of a bigger issue upstream somewhere in our operational decision making. And so I find his work and writings fascinating. So we'll see if Pete's available. He would be a great speaker to the group, so
yes,
we'll get that filled in.
Yeah, you've presented a few times too.
Yeah, but that was all that dry OSHA drivel that I used to come in and talk about. What's up with OSHA? Well, the same old shit. So anyway, thank you guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep doing what you're doing. This is really important work, so don't be afraid to go seek out some assistance, though, man. There are incredible resources in the community, so. And for God's sakes, don't look at the camera.
Yeah.
So.
Be safe.
Yeah, be safe. That's exactly right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and we'll talk to you next week.